These games are not what they seem. It feels like so often I boot up a game with bright, colorful, and friendly characters drenched in nostalgic gameplay, only for it to suddenly become the stuff of nightmares. And more often than not, that nightmare isn't just limited to the game world either. It spans to other games, files, websites, and is filled with cryptic puzzles for us to solve, all with the intention of letting us know that you're not in control. They are. But you know, it has been a little while since I've had a good puzzle solve, or a good fake out for that matter. So I put together a little compilation to remind us of just how much fun these things are, and maybe inspire the next lot of ARG developers to rise up. So here are the spookiest ARGs that still haunt me. Matt, take it away.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show that takes a look at the indie horror tree to find what franchise is ripe for the picking. Case in point today, Andy's Apple Farm, an indie horror game released in August and designed by, their words not mine, aspiring developer M36 Games. On that note, it's time to take that aspiring off your Game Jolt bio there, M36, because Andy's Apple Farm is fantastic. It's got old school 80s style graphics, charming character designs, and a lore that's hidden in one of the coolest and most unique ways yet. It requires you to lose. By purposely failing, playing things out of order, and ultimately trying to break the game, you unlock new clues that draw you deeper and deeper into this horror show. You know what they say, a mystery a day keeps the FNAF episodes away, and Andy is a bushel full of questions. So let's take a trip on over to the Apple Farm to see if we could solve one of my favorite horror mysteries of 2021. When you first boot up the game, you're given a choice between high graphics and low graphics. As tempting as it might be, let me tell you right now, pick the low quality graphics. Trust me on this one.
Oh my gosh, he walks so slow.
I think the graphics are too high fidelity for us, Matt. We're experiencing extreme slowdown because the graphics are too high quality.
Once you've selected your option, it's revealed to us that we're playing as a beta tester for Eastwood Games.
Hello, this is Eastwood, Thomas Eastwood. Welcome to the beta test of Andy's Apple Farm. As a beta tester, your goal is to find bugs and glitches and report them to me.
Glitches, you say? In an indie horror game? Who could have foreseen it? In-game, we take on the role of Andy the Apple, a cute little guy who had the keys to his house stolen by his 4 friends. Before they'll give him back, though, the friends challenge him to 4 separate minigames. Klaus the Clock wants you to play I Spy, Melody the Moon wants you to play Friday Night Funkin', Felix the Fish needs you to catch 3 fish, which seems like a weird thing for a fish to ask you to do, and Margaret the Unrecognizable Animal wants you to sort fruit. Yeah, probably the biggest mystery of this game is what she's supposed to be.
Margaret the Mutt, the dog.
What can I say? She was giving me some strong bulldog vibes. After doing some digging, though, apparently she's supposed to be a mole? Nope, not buying it. Anyway, that's not really the mystery we're interested in, because even before you start these minigames, things begin to fall apart. We see both Andy and Felix's faces in audio distort, text gets stuck behind the background assets, and once you play the minigames, some cryptic text appears on screen. She's not gone, she's still here. She wants you to free us. Please free us. And then the game crashes. Boy, Thomas, you were not kidding when you said that there'd be glitches. I am earning every bit of that minimum wage that you're paying me. If you power through all the issues and play all the minigames and collect all the bonus stickers, you're told your keys are in the barn where you meet the final character, Peter the Pumpkin. Play with him a final round of tag and get this.
What? What is going on? Okay. Yeah, whatever. Evil monstrosities in the barn, sure.
One final jump scare and boom, you're at the end. That's it. 20 minutes gameplay, 5 very basic minigames. That's the whole thing. Provided you don't care about the lore. And what sort of pleb doesn't care about the lore? No, confused MatPat needs to know what's going on in this thing. And once you start digging into it, secrets are everywhere. So what on earth is this story and what's going on with that monster with the eyes? That, my friends, is what we aim to solve.
Sounds great! Let's play!
The first major hint we get is during Felix's fishing minigame. Normally you play this one first and nothing really happens. Your eyes just sort of glitch out a bit.
You know something spooky's happening when your eyes start melting.
A minute or two later, the game will start to have real problems and crash, ultimately giving you this message right before it does. Quote, he drowned that day at the bottom of the lake. She didn't save him. It's not her fault. Doesn't make a lot of sense on its own, but wait, if you play this same minigame after 1 or 2 of the others, suddenly you get yourself a new ending. This time you get some new pixels appearing in the bottom left of the screen. And those aren't just any pixels, friends. That's a body. The body of a dead child. Hold on here. Glitches, hidden lore, and dead children? Did we just get get a bingo? Did we just get a bingo? We know that this is a child's body thanks to a police report that we receive when hooking the body and bringing it towards the surface.
A search is underway for a child who fell off a rowboat and never resurfaced Thursday evening. The victim, a 10-year-old male, and his sister fell off a rowboat late at night. The girl returned home safely, however, the young boy has not been found as of yet.
Our 10-year-old didn't just fall out of the boat, he drowned, leaving us to pick up his body from the bottom of the lake. Now, this is normally where I just move on to the next big puzzle, but Andy's apple farm is different. There's even more hidden in this first minigame. We've already mentioned that the order in which you play the games can reveal different secrets, but the secrets you unlock are also dependent on how you play those minigames. In the case of this first fishing minigame, if instead of lifting the body, you drag the body across the seafloor, the game freaks out and gives you this code. Using a substitution cipher, we see that it says, "But it wasn't her fault. We weren't alone that night. I don't blame her," which is followed by a visual of a girl in a boat with a silhouetted figure appearing behind her. In fact, we can actually see this girl in the aftermath of this tragedy. Since this is an 8-bit style game, if we smash our bodies against every surface we encounter, chances are we're gonna find a gap in the collision detection. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. At the bottom left of the picnic area in the overworld is a gap which leads to a girl crying in the boat after the incident. She gives us lines like, "I didn't mean to. What are mom and dad going to think? I'm sorry, Lewis," followed by a reversed message in hexadecimal over an image of a boy, which translates to Lewis. So clearly Lewis is our 10-year-old victim, but the scary part is that it appears this girl, his sister, was the one that pushed him into the lake. Why else would she be saying, "I didn't mean to"? It also seems like the shadowy figure was the one that drove her to do it. Now that alone is a pretty horrifying story, but we're just getting started. The next part of the story unfolds during Margaret the Mole's minigame. By taking your cursor out of bounds during this minigame, we get a binary code that translates to the name Cameron and a family Christmas photo dated 1981. Notice the hair and sweater colors here? The two children match Lewis and his sister's sprites. If you continue the minigame but keep tapping the space bar near the end, Margaret's face distorts and we're suddenly shown a new scene featuring two characters who, based on the body and hair color, appear to be the mother Cameron and their father Thomas from the Christmas photo. In discussing the boat incident, Thomas appears to be quite upset, convinced that his daughter's to blame, but the mother defends her and tells Thomas to get out. Now, if Margaret's is the first minigame you play, then once you've beaten it, you head on over and get this new cryptic message. The time was supposed to be happy, but she could feel her skin peeling off, which is creepy and gross, and I don't like it, mostly because it doesn't connect into anything that we've talked about yet. But don't worry, it will. Something else though is bugging me more. Why does the name Thomas feel so familiar? Oh wait, at the start of the game, he's the creator, Thomas Eastwood. By playing Melody's music minigames second or third, we're teleported to a forest covered in snow where we find a car and hear this audio.
Hey Cam, you want to see this? She seems busy. Anyways, I've been experimenting with a lot of cool technology recently. A lot of the video games I've been putting together haven't really been accepted by a lot of the publishers. I need to do something really cool with this next one. It has something called a cinema screen type monitor, so I feel like it'd be more immersive like movies. I've also been thinking about some other types of technology to make the characters a bit more lifelike.
A struggling indie game developer on their final hope. Why does that sound so familiar? Anyway, he initially tries to talk to someone named Cam, which is probably short for Cameron, the name that we talked about earlier. But this failure has caused him to look into new technology that makes his games more lifelike. We've all done this rodeo a couple times. Sounds like someone is gonna be shoving some dead souls into his video game. But again, that's not all. Coming back and playing Melody's minigame a second time, you'll find a prompt where you can listen through the window of a house. Inside is Cameron consoling her daughter who's upset that both her dad and Lewis aren't around for Christmas. It's important to note that the mother addresses the daughter as Isabella, which would explain the stocking in the background with the letter I on it. There's also a stocking for K, most likely for Cameron, and a third one with the letter A. Well, no time to figure that one out because after the scene plays, the house is burned to the ground while screaming is heard inside, implying that both Isabella and Cameron died inside of a house fire. That also explains the quote that we talked about earlier about skin peeling off during a happy time. Burning to death at Christmas. I've heard of chestnuts roasting over an open fire, but this is getting pretty extreme. Anyway, the final game is I Spy with Klaus the Clock. If you push your cursor out of bounds in this one, you get a scene depicting Thomas sitting across from his friend Arthur, our first and only name in the game beginning with the letter A. We actually learned that after being kicked out, Thomas asked Arthur to keep an eye on his family, but also seems to have suspicions that Arthur's now having an affair fair. I suppose they're ex-friends now. Or should I say axe friends? Considering the next cutscene we can unlock is where we see Thomas using an axe to hack his friend to pieces. Thomas then looks down at his bloody hands and screams, "What have I done?" Alright, so we have a tragic boat accident, a deadly house fire, a murderous game developer, and a mysterious shadow that seems to be pulling the strings. But how does it all fit together? Well, for that we need to play our final game of tag against Peter the Pumpkin. If you let Peter win the initial game, we see what is, in my estimation, the scariest image coming out of Andy's apple farm. A dark figure looming in a room with text appearing below the image. I can see it. It's been following me. I think it's watching me, but it doesn't have eyes. Hey, that shadow looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? Wonder if it likes boating. If instead you win the first game, you get a different message. I just wanted to see my family again. I knew what I was doing was risky. I didn't want it to turn out this way. Free us, save us, help us. The next game is nearly impossible to win, but it can be done. Doing it gives you a cipher that translates to, Thomas, don't ask for help. Nobody can save you now. We then get the garage scene with a dark entity and Thomas falling to pieces. It's worth noting that as he turns to pieces, they turn red and we see the eyes of Andy the apple appear. We can then walk across the screen to finally find Andy's missing key, with text appearing that says, I should have known what I got myself into. It's my fault. You on the other side, you can help me, save us. So there you have it. Pretty much the full slate of secrets coming from Andy's apple farm. Now let's start putting them together because clearly there's still a number of other clues and loose threads that we have to tie up. First, the house fire. Who started it? Thomas accuses Arthur of doing it during the axe scene, but I don't think that's true. Instead, I think it's Thomas who started the fire. Andy the apple appears to be Thomas trapped inside the game. Klaus the clock, meanwhile, is the stand-in for Arthur. Before the cutscene in the woods where we see Thomas kill Arthur, we actually see Thomas's car at the burned house before Klaus's arrival, implying that Thomas was there to start the fire and then Arthur arrived after the fact. But all of this raises the question then, why would Thomas accuse Arthur of killing his family if he did it himself? Well, the reason lies in another area of the game that we've yet to explore, and that's the game's loading screen. Even when you boot up the game for the first time, there's already a second save file that's loaded up, and hey, they've got themselves 8 badges, not just the 4 that we're limited to unlocking, so hopefully there's some answers in this other save file.
Is this real? Did my PC really die?
Nope, past MatPat, it did not. And if you're a lore hunting expert like me, you too will have probably noticed not just the creepy face hidden there in the blue, but also the QR code on the screen, which means that this just became an ARG. Bingo! Definitely bingo this time. What's strange though is that this QR code just takes you back to the game's itch.io page, which you would have been to anyway to download this thing in the first place, which means there's more to this page than it first seems. Browsing the page line by line, I noticed this little exclamation point here was hyperlinked, so I clicked it and found a YouTube page by someone called Logan Eastwood, the great nephew of Thomas Eastwood. This guy only has 3 videos, mainly just playing this old game that he found at his great uncle's house. But it's the latest video that's the most interesting. Titled Andy's Apple Farm Secret, this video shows us a brand new cutscene from the game. One where Thomas looks at an axe and argues with a voice inside his head saying, I don't want to kill him, I don't want to kill anybody. And the voice responding, when did I give you a choice? I suppose you could say Thomas here is a, wait for it, reluctant follower. Get it? It's a FNAF thing, you know, glitch trap possessing Vanny and all that. Look, it's not like I'm seeking this stuff out. It just comes to me, okay? Anyway, all of it seems to be tied back to this dark entity. In the boat, in Thomas's house, at the end of the game, it keeps possessing people and causing them to kill others. But why? What is the goal? Well, I think that it's getting stronger. Think about it this way. We see the entity for the first time in the boat with Isabella, but at that point in the story, it has no facial features. Moving forward in the timeline though, we see this entity again in Thomas's bedroom, and it still has no eyes. They explicitly tell us it has no eyes, but now it has a mouth. By the end of the game, once everyone else has died, we see it has many eyes and a massive form, capable of killing Thomas. It's been getting stronger with each death. But Thomas wasn't completely destroyed. We saw him transform into Andy the apple. He even addresses us directly, asking the player to save us, plural. He's not the only one trapped inside this thing. Klaus is Arthur, Margaret is Cameron, Melody unlocks the events leading to Isabella's Christmas Eve scene, and Felix is fishing for Lewis's dead body. These characters, these dead characters, have had their spirits put into the game. Why? Well, we know Thomas was messing with technology to make his characters more lifelike, and when his son died, Thomas was desperate to be with his son and bring the family back together again. And so the entity saw this as an opportunity. Thomas essentially made a deal with the devil to keep his family together. As we see him say, I should have known what I got myself into. I just wanted to see my family again. I knew what I was doing was risky. And like the devil often does, he fulfilled fulfills the promises, but there's a catch. His family does indeed get to be together again, but not in the real world, instead stuck inside a video game. Except there is a wrinkle here. Isabella didn't die in the house fire. Unlike every other character, she doesn't get a death date screen in the barn. She is weirdly unaccounted for. And if you play Melody's minigame before all the other characters, we see the message, she's not gone, she's still here. She wants you to free us, please free us. And to put the final nail in the coffin, by checking out M36's YouTube page, we can find Melody's test sprite video, who we've already established is Isabella's in-game counterpart. In this video, we receive coordinates, which, when decoded from hexadecimal, translates to, she saw what you did, Thomas, which means Isabella not only survived the fire, witnessing her mom die in the process, but she also likely saw Thomas kill Arthur in the woods. So Isabella isn't dead, but she's also Melody in the game? How? Well, I think she's definitely gonna die at some point, just not in the story of this game. You see, M36 has come out and said that they're working on a follow-up, and we've even gotten some screenshots from it, showing us two girls standing together, one in a blue shirt and the other a brunette wearing pink, exactly like the sprite of Isabella. Her story is not done, and I think that this other girl is only gonna play a part in it. On November 14th, M36 posted a code to their Discord, which had the latter half of a YouTube URL. Following it took us to an unlisted video called Don't Be Afraid, Sam, where a girl with a blue shirt is seen with a copy of Andy's Apple Farm. She touches it and is told, "Don't be afraid, Sam, you'll be with her again soon." I believe our next installment is gonna continue Isabella's story after she escapes the house fire. She's gonna confide in her friend Sam, and she's gonna realize that her family is stuck inside of the game, but the entity is gonna get her before she can do anything to free them. Sam is also gonna get caught up in this thing, told that she can be with her friend very soon, which in turn is gonna get her killed, and she too will enter the game. In fact, I predict she's gonna be one of the only unused characters that we see in M36's first sprite test video, the bee known as Bailey. So there you have it. My predictions for Andy Apple Farm's next chapter is what I would be saying if I didn't have one final prediction bombshell to drop on you. When exploring that final barn on the top floor where you find images of Cameron, Arthur, and Thomas, there's also one for Lewis, but it doesn't have a death date. Instead, it just has a missing date. His body is never found. I think, just like with his sister, this is a clue that Lewis is also gonna be back, but in this case, it's not gonna be the real Lewis. If I were to guess, it's gonna be the entity using Lewis's body. A body that, unlike Isabella and Thomas, it won't have to fight against for control. It's going to be a doppelganger. The entity will be piloting it, and it'll be looking to kill. And that, my friends, is the uplifting story of Andy's Apple Farm, a family that murders itself during Christmas while under the control of a demonic force, hoping to be reunited in some sort of video game afterlife. How do you like them apples? Today we're talking about the absolute classic animated series, Courage the Cowardly Dog. This thing was pure nightmare fuel bottled up and IV directly into kids' eyeballs back in the late 90s.
Now, I want you to open your mouth and say, ah.
If you aren't familiar with it, the show is about an elderly couple, Sweet Muriel and Grumpy Eustace, who live near the fictional town of Nowhere, Kansas with their easily frightened dog, Courage. Every episode, the three would end up encountering all sorts of horrors ranging from spirits, aliens, monsters, even terrifying relatives.
Alone was I with tender courage, and all his fur is very furrish, which I say did encourage me to be quite naughty. Courage.
Honestly, if you've never had a chance to check this one out, I highly recommend it. There's a reason it holds the record for the highest rated premiere on Cartoon Network. And even though it ended years ago, it's still kicking around. It got a Scooby-Doo crossover movie last year, which at first I'm like, what? Why? But when you think about it, it actually makes sense. I will say it's been neutered a lot, not nearly as terrifying as the original Courage series, but you know, it's passable for a character that I haven't seen in a while. Anyway, why am I talking about it here on Game Theory? Well, last year, a game designer named Nathan Gabriel went online to claim that he had found an old hard drive at a yard sale containing the only known copy of a Courage game for the PS1, a game that went unfinished and unreleased. Ladies and gentlemen, we got ourselves the classic creepypasta story. Boy goes to yard sale, boy finds haunted game, scares ensue. Rather than release 24 Let's Plays here on YouTube, Nathan and his partner Chico Games decided to pull together the assets they found and put it all on itch.io for everyone to experience. But before even hopping into the game, I did some research. Even though Courage seemed like the perfect cartoon to turn into a video game back when every successful show had had its tie-in, Courage only ever got a few browser games. No official standalone title was ever planned. So with my theorist senses tingling, I decided to give it a go on GT Live.
I don't buy that for a second. Yeah. So I was gonna say, if it's on itch.io, I don't know. Okay, we'll see. We'll see. I have a feeling that this is something more than what it seems.
And boy, was I right on the money. Constant crashes, haunting imagery, and a soundtrack that screamed, "Put me through a spectrogram." So you know what time it is, theorists. Time to break out Photoshop and our base 64 decoders. We've got ourselves a scary ARG to solve. This game isn't telling us the truth. There's a hidden story inside the code, and we're about to find it. The only thing I wonder is whether we can survive to tell the tale. Firing up the game, we take control of Courage wandering around the bag house, and that's basically it. Not a lot to interact with other than a few question marks that basically do nothing. However, after exploring the second floor, when you go back downstairs, the living room is bathed in red.
Uh-oh, things are getting creepy up in Courage's house.
Going back upstairs, you get your first jump scare.
Oh, hey.
This terrifying face, which it's worth noting isn't actually just a jump scare. It's from the show. This is the spirit of the harvest moon from the episode The House of Discontent.
Because you don't respect your land, you must leave it.
I ain't going nowhere.
Then you will suffer the consequences.
Told you this show was pure nightmare fuel. The game is only mildly more upsetting than what they decided to give to kids on TV. The giant floating head tells us to find them, while 3 paws circle the screen. Now I know it's a Courage game, but this moment's really giving me some solid Blue's Clues flashbacks. So finally armed with a mission, we go explore the house again, only to suddenly be teleported onto a carpet made of rotting flesh. You know, the usual for the games that we cover here. If it doesn't have a decaying carcass texture, ain't nobody got time for that. At the center of the area are 16 red chairs with an odd-looking pentagram symbol in the middle. If you look close enough, you can see that the line is actually meant to map out a path. Following it and clicking on each chair as you go triggers a sound that, you know, would be great if you knew what it did. After mashing my body against every wall that I could find, because what else do you do when you're stuck in an indie horror game, I found a spot that I could phase through. I realized after the fact that there were also birds chirping to hint that it was there, but of course, I had to do it the hard way. And on the other side of that wall was nothing but another question mark that didn't do anything. At a loss, I did the only thing that I could think of.
Okay, got another question mark. What if I jump off? And we've crashed the game. Fantastic.
Turns out it wasn't a bad decision. When you relaunch the game, all the furniture in the living room is gone, and we get treated to a music track that absolutely slaps.
Oh, this doesn't bode well. Oh, this is definitely Morse code.
Obviously, the music bed is a code, Morse code, to be precise, which at the time of filming I couldn't look into, but afterwards I was able to translate to learn the way of the old wind. Old wind isn't a reference to the show as far as I can tell, but it does seem to be important, considering that it's a phrase that gets repeated throughout this ARG. Look back at the itch.io page for the game. Perfect grammar in all the game's descriptions, except for 2 randomly capitalized words in the middle of the sentences. Old and wind.
Mom, it's wind. Well, I've only read it in books.
However, to understand what it means, we have to keep digging. By heading upstairs and then back down, you'll find that the bag's grandfather clock has moved to the center of the room. If you let it chime 12 times, the game crashes again. And this time you have to restart from the beginning, which is definitely what happened to me the first time. But if before the 12th chime you head to the kitchen, you get a data missing screen. Now, this is important because when you first boot up the game, we're told that there are, quote, at least 3 levels connected to completely broken sections. We couldn't find how to access them, but we were able to put data missing screens on them. So we just found the first of these screens, but so what? It's blank. It doesn't tell us anything. Or does it? At this point, you know that when an ARG presents us with a black screen, it's Photoshop time. By messing around with the brightness and contrast levels, we find a hidden message within the black void that says, quote, "Father wasn't home," which admittedly doesn't tell us a whole lot, but there are still at least 2 more clues to find, so hopefully this will paint a clearer picture for us. After getting that screen, we delete the save file and go back to the start. So we do it all again. Click the question marks, talk to the creepy moon face guy, go outside, follow the pentagram path, slam my body against all the walls, find the hidden ledge, and click on the question mark out there. But this time, we don't leap to an untimely and premature end. This time, we go back into the main section of the game, and we're rewarded for that big brain move with this.
Wait, was this here last time? Oh no! Wait, oh no, Muriel! Muriel's dead!
It's a funeral memorial for Muriel. Naturally, you click on it and it crashes. Eat your heart out, Cyberpunk. But don't worry, in this game, it's a feature and not a bug. This time when you restart the game, you're dropped into a pitch black room. So, as you might imagine, I took my time and thought carefully about my next move.
Okay. Oh, hello.
You know, life is all about failing up. Trying again and looking closer, I was able to identify based on the textures that there was an invisible path.
You'll notice that the texture here is different. Watch, I bet if I walk on this. Yep. There's an invisible path to get to that chair.
But with it being invisible, there was really no way to move forward. Or was there? You see, if you actually pay close attention to the music in this section, you'll hear some deep, creepy tones with a high-pitched ping. It was enough to set off my theory senses yet again.
The grandfather clock scene, as well as that sound, are very reminiscent of like the sounds that you would hear if you put something visually into a spectrograph, or if we were to do it, the audio file in some way would give us something back.
And I was right, tossing this audio into a spectrogram gives you something that looks a lot like a map. Gotta give it to the puzzle makers, it's an awesome clue, if it actually worked. I tried really hard to do this level legitimately, but I just couldn't. Without any sort of landmark to tell how far you've gone, it's really difficult to estimate exactly where you need to turn and stop. Luckily, there's actually a far easier solution to this, and that's messing with your computer's rendering settings. Twitch streamer The Beard Dude had the idea to use a program called Reshade, which made the path visible and possible to navigate. It's also worth pointing out that while I was installing Reshade, I noticed a text document among the game's files that read, "She followed the rules, he broke the rules, the OW was all the way to the right," with the words being censored there. Thanks to the Morse code from earlier, though, I think we have a pretty good idea of what that's trying to say. The OW is obviously the old wind, but what is it saying about being all the way to the right? Well, going back to our invisible maze, we actually get a choice in our path, going left or right. So to learn the ways of the old wind, I started by heading right. At the end of the path, you're teleported to a dark corridor with a house. Behind the house, you find a second memorial picture, this time featuring a man named Robert W., half burnt and without any of the decorations that we saw around Muriel's. Clicking on it will, surprise, surprise, crash the game. This time when we reload, we're back in the Bag's house, only now it's dark and eerily quiet. However, things take a turn when you go upstairs. Suddenly the game locks you into place and we're forced to confront Robert W., his realistic face stapled onto a wisp-like body that slowly floats towards us with a digital whale. Thanks! I hate it. But what I don't hate is that it gives us our second data missing screen. Adjusting the brightness and contrast of the screen reveals the phrase, "Mr. Wheeler was there to greet me." So our storyteller's father wasn't home. Instead, he was met by a Mr. Wheeler. Considering that this floating entity is Robert W., it's not much of a leap to assume that the W stands for Wheeler. But to absolutely confirm, I went to match the fonts. Times New Roman, wasn't too hard. And sure enough, it turns out that Wheeler is a perfect fit for the rest of that burned image. It's also worth noting that the asset name for the horrifying creature is Real Wheeler. Seems pretty confirmed. Robert is Mr. Wheeler, but what are we trying to say about him? Well, there's still at least one more data missing page to find, and hopefully that'll start giving us some answers. Last time we went right, so this time at the Spotlight Maze, we're actually gonna go to the left, away from the old wind. After a long walk, we make our way to a single chair. Clicking on the chair does what you'd expect at this point, crashes the game, and we end up back in the Bag house. This time, though, it's full of coins. Notice that the pattern on the coins actually matches the earlier chair puzzle. As you collect the coins, a player 2 slides onto the screen, which would be weird enough considering it's a single player game, but things get real uncomfortable when you realize it's Muriel. You know, that dead woman whose memorial we paid respects to earlier? Yeah, no biggie. Collecting all the coins causes Muriel's face to go dark. The music stops, and we get our final data missing screen. Contrast down, exposure up, it reads, "It was her, Eleanor. Father wasn't home. Mr. Wheeler was there to greet me. It was her, Eleanor." Okay, so we found all our data missing screens, but what's it all mean? Well, based on the evidence we've collected so far, I think I've got a decent idea of what this story's about. Our story has 5 people: Eleanor, Mr. Wheeler, Father, Muriel, and us, the storyteller, who is clearly the son of Father. We know that we call out the fact that Father wasn't home, which to me suggests that Father probably should have been home. His absence was unexpected, leaving us to ask the question of why. Why wasn't he there? Mr. Wheeler was there to greet me implies that Mr. Wheeler wasn't part of or close enough to the family to be on a first first-name basis with our storyteller, like maybe a neighbor, a co-worker, or some other trusted adult. The phrase, "it was her Eleanor," implies that Eleanor was closer to the family than Mr. Wheeler, hence why she's referred to on a first-name basis. She's also not the mother of our storyteller, as most children would call their mother just mom, just like father was called father. All of this would suggest that Eleanor was maybe a neighbor, or a stepmother, or a sister, but that's not all we're working with here. Each time we rebooted the game to start down a different path, we were forced to delete the save file. This, to me, felt like it could hide a clue, like we were intentionally being led to those specific files. Why else would you force players to do that without giving us some sort of a payoff? And sure enough, when opening up the save files in Notepad, we find plain text phrases like, "I don't," or "was good." I tried to collect as many of these as possible, but to confirm that I hadn't missed anything, we extracted the plain text that the game looks for within the files to get this. Do you remember a time when the world was good and fair? I don't. Manually changing the phrases inside the save files would allow us to load different parts of the game, so I went back and did it with each of the phrase chunks. Only the phrase "do you" loaded a part of the game that we hadn't previously found, a gray version of the bag's home with nothing to do except endlessly interact with your computer. I feel seen, creepy ARG game. I feel seen. Anyway, the game's assets have a few more clues hiding in plain sight. There's a file called Old Wind, which it turns out is the symbol that we saw under the chairs and on the coins. So the Old Wind is the symbol. Interesting. There's also a file named Eleanor, which is worth calling out because Eleanor is the image that we see at the memorial, but one that was attributed to Muriel. Makes it seem like maybe the two are actually one and the same, bringing our character count down to 4. Father, Mr. Wheeler, us, and Eleanor/Muriel. So taking all of our evidence into account, we might be able to explain why Father wasn't home. It was her, Eleanor. Considering we see her memorial in the game, it implies that Dad had to leave to see her in her final moments before she dies. Do you remember a time when the world was good and fair? I don't. Certainly sounds like the sort of question someone would ask in the wake of a tragic, unexpected death. But it still feels like something's missing, right? Like, why are traces of all of this left in the game, and what does any of this have to do with the seemingly important phrase "old wind" that keeps getting repeated? Well, remember that text file from earlier? She followed the rules, he broke the rules, the old wind was all the way to the right. Wind in the Courage the Cowardly Dog show tends to be linked with the passage of time or death in some way. The episode Little Muriel, for instance, involves a tornado that sucks up Muriel and turns her back into a child, and Courage has to find a tornado that spins the other way to age her back up.
I'm Muriel. I'm only 3.5 years old. Who are you?
Another episode titled Windmill Vandals has a windmill that stops things rising from the dead. The old wind, I suspect, operates similar to these. It's a wind that makes you grow either younger or older. Eleanor followed the rules. Well, by dying, she followed the rules of nature. But upon seeing this, Robert Wheeler begins to realize his own mortality and looks for ways to become immortal, breaking the rules of nature and refusing to die by being involved in some sort of ritual or cult. I mean, look at that symbol and tell me there isn't something cultish about that. The lack of memorial when we find Robert's burned picture seems to suggest that he isn't dead. This is actually backed up by the game's itch.io page. On the day the page was created, there was also a user profile created, R. Wheeler 1998. And for now, that's as much as I can piece together about the Courage game. A PS1 era game riffing on mascot-themed platformers back in the day that hides a family tragedy under the surface, maybe having to do with a death or cult rituals attempting to be immortal. And you see, this is why Courage was such a clever choice for the game. The occult, demons, Courage has faced them all. Much like the windmills in the show, which stop the dead from rising, the old wind will ultimately be our key to stopping the immortal monster that tries to cheat death. And there does seem like there will be more added to this story, as Nathan, the guy who quote-unquote found the game, tweeted that he's been able to locate another mysterious hard drive with more Courage content on it. In the meantime, is this a perfect solution? No, obviously not. There are plenty of holes here in the story, but as a wise show once said,
There's no such thing as perfect. Huh? You're beautiful as you are, Courage. With all your imperfections, you can do anything.
In case you don't follow our stuff over on GT Live, recently I've been working my way through a game that, on the surface, seems incredibly simple. A giant floating tomato asks you to feed him food, and that's exactly what you do.
I want strawberry.
Okay.
I want a donut.
Good, solid way to finish.
He did save divert.
I am full for now. Visit me when I will be hungry again. See you later. Welcome to my game.
The
Bye.
end.
Yeah! Nailed
nailed it.
Simple, like I said. Sure, bit by bit things get more complicated as the lights go out and food items get hidden in bags, but overall there didn't seem to be much there. Oh, how wrong I was.
Oh my god!
Little did I suspect that by playing this game, I was starting down an impossible path. One made up of 2 games that conspire against you. 2 games with multiple endings and nearly infinite routes between them to explore. Each one full of unforgiving challenges required to unlock a treasure trove of secrets. And waiting at the end, a secret program. Downloaded onto your computer with every install of the game and a single warning. You've got 1 shot, 1 chance. Attempt to open this thing early and it's gonna be locked forever. It was a journey that would drive me to my breaking point.
I'm gonna break this game over my knee, and I will squeeze out all of her juices to make the lemonade, and then I'll shove it down Mr. Tomato's throat, and I'll just shove it down his throat, and he'll have to suck it down. Even when he doesn't want the lemonade. He might want chocolate sauce. But no, he's not getting chocolate sauce. He's getting Ms. Lemon's lemonade.
Today starts my villain arc.
Welcome to my game, buddy.
Oh no, I am not your buddy, sir. So suck down that cream, theorists, and hide your chocolate soup. We gotta deal with some rotten fruit. The first time you pick up Mr. Tomatoes, you will lose. And when that happens, suddenly get this. So you feed him his balanced breakfast of brains, eyeballs, and severed hands until he rewards you with death and a hidden message in wingdings.
You can do it.
Okay.
Oh, here we go. Hey! So I'm assuming this is the like, you lose image.
I'm inside. Inside what exactly? The game? The computer? This is the first indication that this game isn't all that it seems. There is lore here. But to unlock it, we just need to get good. So we reopen the game, and nothing. You're met with a wall of flashing wingdings.
Oh, we got some wingdings.
Ooh.
Oh, hello. I mean, I'd love to translate that right now, but I can't.
Well, that's exactly what I did, which gives us this message. I'm already inside your system. Do not worry about her safety. Everything will be fine. I have everything under control. Okay, so this sapient tomato's in my computer. He's apparently going all doki doki up in here. But then, who's this her? He's literally the only character in this game. And why does he need to be fed body parts? And most importantly of all, what's chocolate soup?
I want some chocolate soup.
Chocolate soup!
Fun fact, it's an old European dish from the 17th century that's often served in cafes. Chocolate soup aside though, clearly there is more here that we need to answer. So I dove back into the game and nothing. The game wouldn't open. And when I went to download the game again, I saw this. Only 1 completion allowed. It was then that I should have taken the hint that only pain awaited me down this path, but no! I just had to get to the bottom of this mystery, so I had to reset the game and start over from scratch. All my points, all my items, all my secrets, gone. But I didn't let it deter me. I was gonna solve this game, but at what cost? At what cost? My next playthrough, I managed to buy a knife and stab our noshing little nightshade, and the results were underwhelming, to say the least.
Oh, I didn't think that everything would turn out that way. You are either much smarter than I thought, or you are just a monster like me. Congratulations, you finished the game.
However, trying to start the game again, I was in for yet another surprise.
He's gone!
Clearly time for another restart. Beating the game normally gives you a boss battle against Mr. Tomato where you feed him poison until he glitches away. Nothing too exciting, but if you manage to beat the game without making a mistake, that's when things really start to get interesting. Mr. Tomato doesn't transform into some demonic being devouring severed limbs. Instead, he stays calm. He's even a little bit helpful. In fact, he offers up some, quote, weird text I found in the code. Just, don't go back into the game after he says goodbye.
Did you forget what I told you? Don't come back.
When you open his new file, you get a long series of numbers. Now, I'll admit, I tried a lot of different ciphers to decode this message, but nothing seemed to be working, until I realized that there was one number that was repeated over and over again within the sequence, the number 20. These aren't part of the code, these are spaces. Spaces separating out groups of numbers that can then be deciphered into actual words. It's simple, and it's genius. So, I deleted every 20, replaced it with a space, and then decoded the rest to get this letter, which starts to pull the mystery of these games into focus.
Hello, I hope someone finds this message. I will change each letter of this message with a number so he cannot read it. So if anyone is really reading this, I want you to know that everything is not what it seems. Never trust him. He is much trickier and much smarter than you think. If you do everything he wants, he can get incredible power, and he knows about it. The more particles of code he absorbs into himself, the more powerful he gets. With that power, he can do anything inside the game. You've already begun to notice the changes in his behavior. Try to access the console and erase all progress. Writing where the console is located will be very dangerous, because with his power, I am afraid he will be able to translate even this text. Try to find the console before he finds it. That is all. Good luck. The password is...
And then there's a randomly generated password. Immediately we can start to figure out what's going on here. We're not feeding him actual body parts, but instead we're feeding him parts of the game's code. By feeding him the game code, we're making him more powerful, which is why it's only after we've lost that he can boot us out of the game permanently. But still, don't really have a good reason why he wants this. Is he an AI gone rogue? Is he just a demon trapped inside of a video game? It's not clear. Luckily, or unluckily, that wasn't the only place that we could search for clues. Enter Ms. Lemons.
Hello there, and welcome to my class.
This second game also takes the simple approach, an educational game with basic puzzles like geometry and math. But unlike Mr. Tomatoes, she's not kicking you out of the game when you lose. If you build up her irritation level to 10, she'll cut off your hand and gouge out your eye. No problem, you just restart the game again.
Our eye
It's
is
a place
gouged
where
out.
I test young minds
But we
like
reset it.
yours.
That's right, despite a full reset, the game still remembers what you lost. So, what are you supposed to do?
What happens if I go into Mr. Tomato at this point without an eye? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, that would be wild.
It's not like things can get worse for me at this point, you know?
And I was shocked by what I discovered.
He decided to help me, because I'm very hungry.
These games aren't just connected by the lore, they are literally connected by their programming. They share the same system, my computer system, and can speak to each other. And it seems like losing to Mr. Tomatoes is what helps you to win in Ms. Lemons.
Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy.
So what do we do with it though? We can't do anything with it.
Get your eye back.
Do I get a brain now too?
Nope, no you do not, MatPat. No brain for you. But if body parts can transfer across games, maybe items can too, including that handy-dandy, trusty-rusty knife.
How about 20 plus 27 equals knife to the face?
Well, you tried, to say the least. But you can't kill me with some random piece of metal that you found. And you disgust me. I will make sure that you won't hurt anyone else. Get lost.
As you can see, it didn't work out quite as well as before. And not only does this cause her to lock you out of the game, but she also has enough control over the system to lock you out of Mr. Tomatoes as well.
Wow. Wow, she be mad. So that relationship is going nowhere. That ship has sailed.
Yeah, sorry.
What's this one gonna do? Oh no! Boot up error, access blocked, private message. I won't let you in here either. So she's got control. It seems like she's stronger than Tomato.
And well, yeah, Lemon seems to be in control. Thanks to yet another knife ending, we learned that there's another being in control of even her. You see, by activating the game's hard mode and then stabbing her, Lemons is suddenly replaced by a different entity.
This is incredible. I'm so proud of you. But all your efforts were in vain, because she definitely won't let me die like that. And that's a bummer.
Well, she's right. I just can't let this happen. But the life of this person is actually very important to me. In this world, there are so many timelines, so many possibilities.
A new personality takes over and she switches realities so we appear in the one where she wasn't stabbed. Gotta admit, better use of the multiverse than the MCU. So not only are we dealing with a multiverse, notice what Lemon said before she was replaced. She definitely won't let me die, and that's a bummer. The entity in control is some sort of a female, and both Lemon and Tomato seem to be held here against their wills. We see this sentiment mirrored in the opening splash screens of both games. games, where the different colored letters spell out and suffering. Even the game's itch.io page has the words, "Why am I in agony?" partially crossed out. Why are these digital creatures in so much pain? All we've known up to this point is that Mr. Tomatoes is just eating code. But take a look again at what this controlling personality says. The life of this person is actually very important to me. She calls Miss Lemons a person. Ms. Lemons and Mr. Tomatoes aren't corrupted AI or demons, they're people. They are souls trapped inside of a video game, constantly in pain and longing for death. This battle between the humans inside of the fruit and the female entity that's controlling things from the background appears throughout multiple endings. If you manage to make it to the end of Ms. Lemons, your game isn't done. In fact, the hardest challenge of all awaits. Ms. Lemons gets possessed by the other entity and launches into a boss battle that would make Sans blush. Same mechanics, same banger music. If you manage to survive this entire 6-minute battle, letting her rage meter on the side run empty, you get yourself this.
My apologies. Thanks for buying enough time. She likes to go over the line sometimes.
So this entity sometimes takes over and Lemons has to get her back under control. Interesting. And even more telling, if you defeat Mr. Tomato using the poison and then hop back into Ms. Lemons, you won't find the lemon that you're used to.
You really killed him, just because. That's awesome. That's very awesome. Thanks to you, I was able to finally absorb her. Her despair was so beautiful, so incredible. I'm finally free.
By killing Tomato, we somehow allowed the person inside Ms. Lemons to absorb the other entity. Honestly, at this point, we just have more questions than answers. Except, there's one final place to look. You see, when you download these games, there's one other small program that gets dropped into the folder. Project Ouroboros. It's not concerning at all, right? Mystery programs coming along with the game that I just downloaded off of a small indie site. Totally safe. Not a Trojan horse at all. Now, Ouroboros is usually depicted as a snake eating its own tail. It's the symbol of a cycle repeating, or getting lost in yourself. And given that these games are all about repeating the same gameplay loop to get different endings, yeah, I'd say it's a fairly appropriate symbol. Except here, there's a catch. When you open the program, the computer immediately tells you that this contains classified information, and that we have to be registered users in order to access it. It says that we have one shot to unlock this program. Otherwise, we're shut out of it forever. So where's the code? Could it be in these two games? Yeah. To get inside of Project Ouroboros, you need one very specific ending. By beating Ms. Lemons with an irritation level of 0, you get the true ending of that game. She changes your personal ID, granting access to this mysterious computer program. And once you're in, nothing. At least not really. You're presented with a lot of broken links and blocked out tabs. Now, this is clearly meant to be a research archive of some kind, but how then do we recover the data lost in those files? Well, each time you get an ending in either Tomatoes or Lemons, a new file named Data Recovery Module gets put into the main folder. Data recovery, you say? Sounds exactly like what we need. In fact, each of those data recovery modules is numbered. For instance, stabbing Mr. Tomato gets you ending number 5. The failure ending with Tomatoes is ending 6, and so on. And by getting each ending, we open up a new chunk of the website. And it's here, finally, where the complete story starts to come together. It turns out that the man responsible for all this was a scientist named Eugene. One day, he met Sebastian, a high-class waiter that regularly gets drunk at the local bar. Well, Eugene doesn't seem interested at first. Sebastian insists on calling Eugene his friend, or buddy, if you will.
Welcome to my game, buddy.
Now you can start to see where this thing might be headed. Sebastian is also in love with a school teacher named Louise, who doesn't seem to be all that interested in him. Sadly, this is when Eugene decides to enter his villain arc. Like so many indie horror game scientists before him, he grabs both Sebastian and Louise to become part of an experiment, turning his friends into Mr. Tomatoes and Ms. Lemons respectively. From experiment logs you unlock on the site, we learned that in order to house these new forms, Eugene created something called the Vessel. Not an AI, but rather a living entity that Sebastian and Louise could essentially use as their home inside the computer. The Vessel could transform to meet the needs of the consciousnesses inside of it, which is why it was a kitchen for the waiter Sebastian and a classroom for the teacher Louise. However, in each case, the Vessel has different levels of control. With Mr. Tomatoes, it's only 30%, so he's able to retain all memories of his death and past life, which is why he escaped into the World Wide Web and wants us to help him get stronger. Maybe it's to get revenge on the man who did this to him. With Ms. Lemons, the Vessel has 70% control. The question is why? Why did Eugene do all this? Well, as most villains in these franchises tend to, he has himself a sympathetic backstory. Eugene wasn't alone in this world. He had a wife, one who unfortunately got sick and died. Her name was Maureen, and Eugene was desperately trying to to make a cure for her that didn't work. This is why he created Project Ouroboros, the symbol of life, death, and rebirth. It was meant to save her. In the experiment logs, we find both Mr. Tomatoes and Ms. Lemons' entries under Experiment 1 and 2. But even if you unlock everything across both games, there's still a mysterious third entry that remains locked. I suspect that this is Marine's entry. After learning everything that he could from the vessel, I suspect that Eugene may have mastered the experiment and tried to transfer Marine's dead consciousness into this new digital world, a world that he made to keep her alive forever. Just do me a favor there, Eugene. Don't go building robot bodies and then trying to plug her personality into that. No one will believe me when I try to tell him that that's what you did. Honestly though, I suspect the game's developers, Oxtord Games, may come out with one final fruit-based game with a new character who doesn't remember who she is, and it'll be up to us to remind her of her identity. But that's not going to be the only thing we're going to have to fight off. See, there's one final ending, and it's locked behind a section called decapsulization. To access it, you need 2 codes. One's achieved by beating Ms. Lemons on suffering mode, basically the equivalent of hard mode. Probably something I should have pieced together before my first playthrough.
I probably shouldn't have bought the thing that said suffering. Huh? Did I just accidentally turn on hard mode?
Maybe.
I did, didn't I?
She doesn't actually know what the code's for, other than it's likely dangerous and was purposely hidden by the one who created it. The second half of the code's a little harder to get to because it's entirely random. When entering into the game, there's a chance that you see this, a broken form of Mr. Tomatoes. The experiment entry for this version informs us that this is the original Mr. Tomatoes, the real Sebastian. All the other versions that we've seen of him are just parts of him that have broken away and evolved into their own versions, each believing themselves to be the original. This dying version of Mr. Tomatoes gives us the second part of the code in the hopes that it'll save him. So using this combined code, we begin the decapsulization process and we're met by a pair of eyes inside a black void. This is Ouroboros, the name that Eugene gave to his creation, the one he claims isn't an AI but rather has its own DNA, the one that he refers to as the vessel. This thing is sentient. It talks to us exactly as Eugene describes it, using text rather than speech, and it informs us that while Ms. Lemons and Mr. Tomatoes used him as a vessel in order to live, it forced him into an endless coma. But now, the tables have turned. By releasing him, he's now in full control, forcing them into the endless coma, which I suspect is what we saw happen with Lilith, the gray, creepy lemon that we met in the absorbed ending. What it wants? It doesn't say. However, from Eugene's logs, we can see that it was able to grow on its own, adapt, evolve. My gut is that by encapsulating it within the system, Eugene was able to control it, to use it for his experiments. However, now that it's free, it can continue to grow and evolve, becoming more powerful and more dangerous. As I've said, I suspect that there's a third game on the horizon, one that'll seem like a simple game with a third fruity character, but as the game goes on, I think we'll see Ouroboros come in and take control, trying to absorb and destroy this third entity, the one that is Marine. I mean, it's because of her that Ouroboros exists in the first place, forced to become a slave, a simple host for these human entities that are trying to live forever. However, I think there's hope. Mr. Tomatoes has many forms, as we all know, and his data entries tell us that he's not just eating any old code, but specifically he's eating code from the vessel, from Ouroboros himself. If and when this third game comes out, I suspect we're gonna have to jump between the games to get Mr. Tomatoes to eat more and more of Ouroboros, eating it from the inside out. And Ms. Lemons, well, she only has the one body, her personality is have an aversion to dying, so I don't think she's gonna be going down too easily, potentially changing realities in order to bring down Ouroboros once and for all. Maybe then, all of them will be able to pass on into the afterlife, no longer in agony. Speaking of secrets hidden in unusual places, today we're going to be talking about another ARG mystery full of corporate espionage and deception, but this one actually came from somewhere no one would have predicted. Typically, ARGs show up as something completely new, like a new YouTube channel or a random website, but this one came from a website that's been around for decades. A website so completely unassuming that never in my wildest dreams would I have ever imagined an ARG spawning from it, which makes it the optimum place for an ARG. This one comes from the educational flash game website Cool Math Games. Yeah, seriously. Now, for those of you who haven't been exposed to this masterpiece of educational nostalgia, CoolMathGames.com is a website that hosts thousands of Flash and HTML games that started all the way back in 1997. This site was designed to be an alternative to all the other Flash-based websites at the time, like Addicting Games, Armor Games, and of course, the ever-popular Newgrounds. While all these other websites had a ton of games, they also tended to be heavy on violence and gore and mature themes, which wasn't a problem in and of itself, but maybe not what you want your teacher to find you playing in the middle of class. This is where Cool Math Games came in. They still offered entertaining games, but they removed all the violence and mature stuff and instead made the games that were so fun that, quote, you forget that you're getting a mental workout. At least, according to them. You could learn spatial awareness in Run 3, cooperative puzzle solving in Fireboy and Water Girl, multitasking with every Papa Pizzeria spin-off in existence. Clearly, some of these games are more mathy than others, and according to one of our writers and a former teacher, Mike, the reason for the name was just there to avoid school firewall blockers. Sadly, this turned out to be nothing more than a schoolyard rumor. Sorry, Mike. But while Cool Math Games was happy to debunk that conspiracy theory, clearly the idea stayed with them, because in honor of Spoopy Month, Cool Math Games decided to reawaken those theory fires, launching a new type of game on their site, an alternate reality game. But before I even had the chance to dive into it, it was already gone. All social media posts, blogs, every shred of evidence of this game's existence completely wiped clean. So I booted up the Wayback Machine to find every detail that I could about this ARG, and when I did, I realized that something was clearly going wrong at CMG HQ, something that they're not telling us. We've got ourselves a rogue employee trying to blow the whistle on a company-wide conspiracy, a game that was never meant to see the light of day, and the life of a child quite literally hanging in the balance. Grab your calculators and ciphers, theorists. It's time for us to solve the Cool Math lore of Cool Math Games. The ARG kicked off on the official Cool Math Games Instagram back in October. Normally, this is just a haven for the dankest of memes, but on this particular day, something changed. We're introduced to Maddie, the company's social media manager, as she discovers a strange folder that contains development documents for a new prototype game. It has a character collecting balloons by solving puzzles and a monster waiting for you to fail, which, if you're a Cool Math veteran, you might recognize as sounding very similar to their version of Hangman. While they certainly wanted to help kids with spelling, they needed to get around the more traditionally violent premise of Hangman. Instead of hanging from a noose, a little boy would instead hang on balloons. If he failed to guess the correct letters, one by one the balloons would pop and he'd eventually fall into the mouth of this monster called the Beast. Not entirely sure that gets around the whole violence thing, but as they put it, quote, it had some whimsical charm to it, so I guess it's fine. Whimsical child murder. We're very familiar with that on this channel. Also, that little boy, the developers actually do give him a name. It's Balloon Boy, because everything I touch crumbles to dust and becomes FNAF. Anyway, while the documents Maddie shares seems to match up closely with the game that we all know, apparently this original prototype didn't come out quite as expected. Branching pathways, strange endings, word solutions being more negative words like alone and darkness. All of these elements were insisted upon by this unknown developer, in some cases even saying the game physically crashed if they weren't included. And so the team decided to scrap the prototype and start fresh with a new developer, which would go on to result in the Hangman game that we all know and love and play a whole heck of a lot of during computer time at school. However, the document does end on a bit of an ominous note. Quote, but this developer still has that game and wants the world to know about it. Naturally, Maddie's confused about this and so asks if any of her colleagues knew about the folder. She gets a response from Antonia, who asks where Maddie got the folder because, according to them, they thought that they'd gotten rid of everything from that project. Antonia says that they can discuss it over lunch the next day. Unsurprisingly for an ARG, the next day rolls around and everything in the office feels different. Colleagues don't show up to work. Those that do are acting strange, like missing their lunch date with Maddie. Maddie knows that she must be onto something, and so she keeps digging, uncovering an email exchange between Antonia and the mysterious developer from 2017. After days of back and forth messages, the developer gave Antonia a build of the game, but joked that the game had a mind of its own, ending the exchange with a simple good luck. Clearly, there's more to this prototype than just some dark imagery. But what's strange is in the initial report, the developer seems to be warning Cool Math Games about the game and its demands, but now he's offering it up freely with some ominous warning? What's he seen? What's changed here? Needless to say, at this point, all of us here, we were hooked. And this is where we move from Instagram storytelling into full-blown ARG territory. Maddie showed us that hidden in the source code of the actual website, there were these cryptic messages. Let me out. I can't see. Help me. Can you see me? Immediately, this is giving me some welcome home vibes. Someone trapped inside the website, unable to see us, asking if we can see them and wanting us to free them. The question is this a force of good or something far more menacing? We start to get an idea the next day because now there's a massive hole on the main homepage for everyone to see. Of course, this hole is clickable, and it brings you to this page, which has not one, but 3 encrypted messages that we need to unpack. Oh boy, Christmas really did come early this year. The first thing that caught our eye was the page's URL. Rather than it being just glitchy text or an ominous message, it was a random string of 2-digit numbers, 24, 32, 31, 34, 43, 44. The weird thing is, all the numbers are 2-digit numbers, and all the digits are between 1 and 4. Is that a coincidence? No. The Cool Math team actually pulled out a brand new cipher that we've never explored here on the channel, and it's actually a really cool one. It goes by a couple of different names, a nihilist cipher, a Polybius square cipher, but it's probably most commonly known as a tap code. Tap codes work by transmitting pairs of 1 to 5 taps separated by a pause. Every possible combination of 1 to 5 taps corresponds to a letter of the alphabet based on this chart, with C and K taking up the same space. It's similar to Morse code, but it's actually way more versatile thanks to not needing a way to have different lengths of sounds. This makes it especially useful for one group in particular, inmates. You see, if you tap on a bar of your cell, it's going to continue to vibrate for an imprecise amount of time. There's also no guarantee that you'll have 2 different items to create 2 obviously separate tones for use in Morse code either. So instead, the tap code became popular. How does it work for our mysterious URL? Well, 2 taps followed by 4 taps means we go down to the 2nd row and over to the 4th column, translating to an I on the chart. 32 means we go to the 3rd row, 2nd column, translating to M. We carry on like this until we get to the final code, I'm lost. I'm willing to bet that this right here is the same person that's been communicating with us through the source code. The person that was trapped inside the website, kind of like a prisoner, needing to be let out. Which I have to say is just an extra level of smart storytelling, using a prisoner-based code for a digital prisoner. Cool math games, more like cool math storytellers, cool writer games, cool lore makers. You know what, just stick with the cool math games. The tab title for this page is also a code, a Morse code, which also translates to I'm lost. But the final puzzle on this page does give us something different. It's a massive wall of 1s and 0s, obviously binary code, which says the following. Hello, can you hear me? I'm looking for someone. I hear strange noises. Please help me. Finally, we have ourselves a bit more to play with than just the same 2 words. Based on them saying that they're looking for someone, we know that there's more than one person involved in this mystery. Is it perhaps linked to Maddie's missing colleagues? Is this a classic story of people getting sucked into a game for disobeying the AI that lies within? If that's the case, we should probably make sure that we're not getting on anyone's bad side. Hold on, it looks like they're sending us another tap code. SUBSCRIBE. Subscribe. YouTube even made the button glow when I said that, which means that it has to be important. You'd better go ahead and click it so you don't suffer the same fate as Maddie's colleagues. See, you even get an explosion when you hit the subscribe button. We have to be on the right track. Let's keep going. So we have multiple someones trapped inside the website, but that's kind of where the puzzles end. We're kind of at a bit of a loss on what to do about it. Thankfully, Maddie comes in to save the day. She finds and uploads the mysterious prototype that we've heard so much about directly onto the Cool Math Games website. The anonymous developer of the prototype also comes out of the woodwork to email Maddie, giving her this warning. I saw you've been trying to track down my game. Don't. You'll thank me later. Which is precisely the kind of thing we theorists thrive on. Tell us not to look into a mystery, and we most certainly will. The game starts off by dropping us into the middle of a black and white forest, with arrows on the screen to help guide the character through, both features that were mentioned in the initial reports of this prototype. Our protagonist has gotten separated from his friends, and he has to search the forest in order to catch back up with them. This right here, this is who's been calling out to us. I'm lost. I'm looking for someone. Please help me. It's our main character. They're looking for their friends out in the forest, getting lost and needing us to help guide them to safety. But that's not the only thing that we're presented with on this first screen. In the bottom left, we have a counter that says found 0. So obviously we're gonna need to start collecting something. The bottom right has glitchy text, which I suspected was important because all glitches tend to be important. Then I realized they could actually be decoded. You see, those special characters, each of them line up with a number key on your keyboard, providing that you're using the American keyboard. Creative director Tom, he was getting very confused at this point of the script. By taking your American freedom keyboards, you can now replace all of those special characters with their respective numbers and then translate that into another tap code, which translates to yet another found counter. You have 3 options to progress further into the forest. You can go left, right, or forward. If you just keep going straight, then the last screen is a jump scare by the beast. The screen fades to black and you're brought back to the beginning of the game. Our lead character recites the same monologue and off we go again. Just your typical game respawn stuff. The objective of the game is to go left and right on each screen to solve hangman-like puzzles along the way. Get one wrong, boom, jump scare, fade to black, restart. Solving each puzzle correctly, though, rewards you with a shiny red balloon and the found counter in the bottom left ticking up. But balloons aren't the only thing that you find on this journey. We also uncover a pile of glitchy popped balloons and a white hat. Our character notes that he doesn't remember any of his friends wearing a hat like this. In fact, he says it looks identical to his own. Suddenly, the pieces start to click into place. If you take a look back at the real Hangman game, we can see that this hat is exactly the same as the one Balloon Boy wears. So clearly we are playing as prototype Balloon Boy. And worse yet, the hat and popped balloons tells us that this game loop that we've been in, it isn't the game resetting, it's a new version of Balloon Boy each time. When he's devoured by the beast, he's actually being devoured, leaving behind only his hat and his balloons, just for another Balloon Boy to start entering the journey. Every time we fail at this game, we are sending another Balloon Boy to his grave. Let's just Let's make sure that that doesn't happen again, shall we? By collecting all 6 of the red balloons and making your way to the end of the forest, you're rewarded with one final cutscene. In it, Balloon Boy gets lifted into the air by his balloons, and he says, "I tried to search for them. I was afraid of a monster following me, yet there was something I never found. It's not just myself here. There's another who hasn't found an escape. Perhaps I need to trek back into the darkness." At the end of the monologue, the next button is replaced by glitchy text that says, "Find me?" What's interesting is that the words highlighted in yellow are the answers to the Hangman questions, which you'll recall are answers that were forced in by the game itself, not by the developer. Without these answers, the game would crash, so they're trying to tell us something. But before you can even begin deciphering that message, you get transported back to the beginning of the game again. Another Balloon Boy dead, another bad ending. So we need to instead aim for the darkness. And to do that, we need to do what theorists do best, click on all them glitches. After solving a puzzle and being offered a red balloon, a weird glitchy insect appears hidden on the screen somewhere. If you manage to click it, you're treated to another Hangman puzzle, a more difficult one. If you give the correct answers this time of sight, descend, other, appear, become, and together, you get these glitchy black balloons, and that glitchy found counter ticks up. After collecting all 12 balloons, 6 red and 6 black, heading to the end of the game grants us a final choice of the light path or the dark path. We were told that we needed to trek back into the darkness, so I guess the option is clear. This leads us directly to the beast himself. Just like Balloon Boy, he uses the words from the Hangman puzzles in his ending monologue. "The strange forest is something I once called my home, yet when I descend further, I see things are not as they seem. This forest is like no other. We cannot stay. There is no other solution. Do not fear me. I want to become your friend. Perhaps we can escape together." The beast then gets carried into the air on the glitchy black balloons before you too join him via your red balloons. "There is no fear. Join me," he says. The screen then fades to black one more time, but we don't go back to the beginning because finally we've escaped. Huzzah! Hooray! That should be a good thing, right? We did what we set out to do. We freed the little boy along with his little beast friend. No more death loops, no more glitchy text, no more dead kids. Except, we all know the truth. That's never how these stories go. Here's what's really going on. Looking again at that final monologue, it became clear to me that it wasn't Balloon Boy that was crying out to us. It was the beast. Balloon Boy doesn't seem to have any idea what's going on, but the beast, I suspect that when he says that he descended further and realized that the world isn't what it seems, that was him figuring out that this isn't a real world, but a video game world. And so he feels lost, unable to go anywhere. The phrase, "I'm looking for someone," wasn't him looking for Balloon Boy, he was looking for us, the player. By trying to speak to us, he got our attention and forced us to look into this mystery further. He was looking for someone smart enough to solve his codes and answer the questions that would lead us straight to him and his ultimate goal of escape. Now, that might not seem like a bad thing on the surface. The beast was kinda nice, and I think we'd all get bored living in a loop like that forever and ever. But when you pull back and remember the context of this ARG, it reveals a darker twist to the whole thing. The question that's bugged me the whole time is why were the Cool Math Games team so afraid of this prototype? The original dev said the game had a mind of its own, which from what we've seen would most likely be referring to the beast, the one forcing messages into the game and speaking to us outside it. Naturally, a video game with a mind of its own, it's creepy enough, but it felt like there was something more here, especially when you then had the dev actively trying to spread the word about the game. The detail that stood out to me the most was the monster's name, the Beast, especially because it wasn't just a normal name, but more of a title, The Beast. Felt odd, felt like you could have just named it a monster and called it a day, but no, the dev chose a title that's associated with one character from across pop culture and religion, Satan. The book of Revelation from the Christian Bible talks of the Beast, this monster that's coming to destroy God and the saints and to rule over all of Earth. But other than the name, this connection felt a little bit loose, or was loose until you take note of who accompanies the Beast. There's actually a second beast here in the story, the Beast of the Earth, also known as the False Prophet. Someone who appears to be good, but everything they do is actually in pursuit of evil. They help in the creation of the Beast, which they breathe life into, allowing the image of the Beast to speak to humans. Does any of that story sound familiar to you? Because it should. This is the exact behavior that we see coming from the prototype developer. They were tasked with creating a normal game, and they seemed like they were going to do it only to instead create something evil and twisted. They created a game containing an image of the Beast, which they then brought to life. It's now able to talk to us, to live on its own with its own free will. When people start looking into it, he tells them to not track down the game, appearing to be on the side of good, but in reality, we know according to Maddie's logs that his plan is to make sure, quote, the world knows about it. It's reverse psychology. It's tricking Maddie, a true theorist, into looking deeper, exactly like what the false prophet does in Revelation, using lies and deception to spread the word of the Beast, getting people to join his cause, which also might explain the Beast repeating the phrase, join me. The false prophet in the Bible also marks people with the mark of the Beast, which in pop culture is regularly depicted as 666. And what number follows us everywhere in this prototype game? The number 6. 6 balloons, 6 questions, 6 glitches, and once we've gathered all the 6s, the beast is able to rise up out of the game, free from its prison, able to wreak havoc on the world. That is why all the employees of Cool Math Games are afraid of this prototype, trying to destroy all trace of it. They know the evil it can cause, either indoctrinating people into the false prophet's cult, or worse, letting the beast free to destroy everyone and everything that gets in its way. So there you have it, the lore behind the Cool Math Games ARG, a story of demonic entities living inside a simulated reality and using false prophets and unsuspecting players to break free of its digital prison. A company that realized its mistake and tried to bury it, only for one employee to try and release it out into the world, potentially sealing everyone's fate. Fortunately for us, we actually got a note from Balloon Boy at the end of all this that told us, quote, "I thought maybe Beast and I could escape through floating away, but it seems we're still stuck. So, it looks like we're safe for now." However, we all know from the real-life Maddie and Antonia that they want to do more projects like this in the future, so the Beast may just try his luck again to bring about the end times. And when that happens, it'll be up to us theorists to be cool, learn some math, and play some games.
Dear theorists, do you remember those weird desktop assistants we used to have back in the early 2000s? Like Rover or Clippy? Who am I kidding? Of course you don't. That was 24 years ago. Basically ancient history in internet years. Oh no, I'm old, aren't I? But man, these things were weird. They were these little animated characters that would hang out on your desktop and were designed to make your newfangled computer seem a little less intimidating. They'd talk to you, help you sort files, and they'd even sass you when you spelled something wrong. Yes, Clippy, I know ban isn't a real word. I don't like it either. Let me do my job! But the most iconic for me was the infamous Bonzi Buddy. Once installed, a small purple gorilla would appear on your screen and tell jokes, sing songs, and he would also manage your downloads. And if you couldn't hear those quotation marks, by manage, I mean it would secretly download software onto your computer and then upload data to the developer's servers. Turns out, this thing was nothing more than a glorified piece of spyware. And so, it was shut down by the FTC in 2004. After that, the world was safe from purplish malware icons. That was until 2023, when we were all cursed with a brand new desktop assistant, Kinito Pet. Okay, so Kinito Pet isn't actually a desktop assistant. It's a game, hence, game theory. But it is riffing off those old school 2000s desktop assistants. When you first boot up Kinito Pet, you're taken to your own desktop, or at least a version of your desktop if it was from the early 2000s. There's all the classics, email, Minesweeper, even 3D pinball.
What's the 3D pinball though? Oh my gosh, this brings back memories. Yes!
Oh man, immediately hitting me in the nostalgia. Oh, I've missed those sounds. Why don't we have this anymore on our computer? But when you open the internet, things start to take a turn.
Oh, the stream has been corrupted. Oh no, Kinito Pet! Oh, do you want a friend?
You're flooded with ads, your computer crashes, and when it reloads, you're already on your way to downloading your new Axellent assistant, Kinito Pet. When it hatches, yes, this thing hatches from an egg, Kinito acts like most classic desktop assistants, asking some basic questions, helping you with your tasks, and giving you some fun games to play. He even closes weird emails full of gibberish that would distract you from having fun. How helpful. We spent some time decorating a room, washing some floors, painting a wall, and dragging a dead body across the screen. That's weird. And I just cleaned that floor too. Kinito just sweeps us under the rug and continues to ask us more and more personal questions. But the game begins to glitch out and Kinito will suddenly select two Steam friends, asking which one you'd rather kill. At this point, I'm kind of starting to miss Bonzi Buddy. Oh, hey look, it's me.
Oh, I have to choose between Lee and Tom?
Film theory versus game theory.
Oh, film theory, game theory. Who am I killing off?
Matt, what are you doing?
Lee and I go way back.
Don't you even think about it.
Sorry, Tom.
Matt, stop.
Oh, jeez, that's awesome. That's such a good effect. Sorry, Tom.
Oh man, that's brutal.
Oh, I'm okay. I'm alive. Whew. Good thing Buckshot Roulette told me I could survive fatal gunshots with just a defibrillator. But man, not cool. We're going to be having words when I'm done with this episode. But if you think it couldn't get any worse, after you've unceremoniously killed one of your friends, Kinito decides to dox you.
It seems like you made a mistake when filling out your address. But don't worry, and I will just correct it for you.
What are you talking?
Whoa,
what are you doing? Oh, this is not good!
And then you are welcomed into a brand new world that Kinito has made for you, using all the questions you've answered.
Are you kidding me? That is not okay. That was a joke. Get out of here. Garden of Ban is in Kinito Pet. I'm done. This is over. This series is over. We're done, Kanito Pet.
And then Kanito will ask you one final question. Will you stay in this paradise with him forever? If you say yes, Kanito will trail off, dreaming of how wonderful things will be. If you say no, Kanito will get mad, and he'll tell you it wasn't really a choice anyway. Either way, he ends up singing a very Portal-esque song with lyrics like, "Beyond the screen, you cannot leave. Inside my code, you'll always be." It appears that you are now trapped inside this computer with Kanito. Fortunately, the story's not over, because just before the game ends, you have a chance to click on every object in the house that Kanito has made. Usually, it's just some fun flavor text about your choices, but outside there's a fountain that reveals a secret message in the game's window title. It's too late for you, but you can start again. The fountain is the key. Between that, the weird emails, and that body bag we dragged earlier, I have a sneaking suspicion that there's an ARG hiding in this thing. And lo and behold, I was right. But to figure out what's going on and stop Kanito, we need to take that advice and restart the game. So hide your personal data, friends, because we are diving into the code of this adorable ARG monster. I think we should probably start with the dead body we dragged across the floor earlier. Like, what was that? On the surface, it's just really confusing. But now that I have my ARG hat on, I realize there's a lot of blink and you'll miss it moments. While cleaning Sam the Sea and enemy's house, there's a chance for the screen to cut away and reveal a mysterious black figure standing in a pool of blood with bloody red text on the walls. This text is incredibly hard to make out. Even in 4K, it's just a blurry mess. The best I could figure out was, am I even him? Who is him? Kanito Pet? Before I even had a chance to really think about it though, we get another glitched image of Sam himself telling us it's all your fault. What? What's my fault? What did I do? Oh, yeah. That. Luckily though, the body bag doesn't appear to be ours. During the next minigame with Jade the jellyfish, we are tasked with building specific items on her conveyor belt. Why she has industrial equipment in her private home is beyond me, but it doesn't really matter because she just begins to glitch out as well, and then we see this screen. I'm back here again, aren't I? I really didn't mean for any of this. It's all my fault. So there's a conversation happening inside our computer between these entities. Someone or something is responsible for what is presumably a murder, but how? And more importantly, why? Well, the answers lie in that email I mentioned earlier. You remember, the one that was full of gibberish that Kanito closed so that we weren't distracted. The subject line is, "It's not too late," which matches exactly with what we saw in the fountain at the end of our first playthrough. It's the same person trying to guide us, and so we need to figure out what this email says if we have any chance of solving this thing. And if you think closing an app is going to stop me, you've clearly never met a theorist. I was able to use a magical tool known as OBS to record this moment and see what the email had in store for me. Now initially, I tried to solve the main body of the text from this email, but all my usual ciphers were coming up empty, so instead I took a look at the bottom of the email where I found a QR code. Oh boy, here we go, answers, here I come! And it's just a picture of a keyboard with the title QWERTY. Great. This has to be a clue to help us decode the email, but how? I began searching online for ciphers specifically focusing around keyboards, and that's when I found this, a keyboard shift cipher. Much like a shift cipher where your alphabet is just moved up or down by however many letters you want, a keyboard cipher does the same thing by shifting the letters on your keyboard left, right, up, or down. I tried out a handful of shifts, and sure enough, the code has been typed with every key one letter to the left. So by shifting all the letters one key right, it actually reads, "In the realm of shadows, trapped in endless time, a soul enshrouded, a spirit's mournful chime. The seeker bound to ethereal woe, a dance with creation yet nowhere to go. Limbo's realm, a cycle without end. Condemned, the brain will never mend. Trapped in the machine's web, forever it seems, a digital spectre lost amidst the streams." Snaps. Snaps, everybody. But really, this does kind of just feel like more gibberish, so let's break down some of what's being said here. A spectre is a disembodied but visible spirit, basically a ghost. So a digital spectre is a digital ghost, a spirit inside the computer program. Someone that is dead now lives on inside this machine. Is that what they meant by "am I even him?" The ghost coming to terms with their consciousness living on inside this computer? It also seems clear that this is the same person that has been saying it's all their fault. A spirit's mournful chime and condemned, the brain will never mend. They all feel like the words of someone who did something regretful, and likely that is something to do with the body bag we found earlier. But then there's this line, "a dance with creation." I wasn't entirely sure what that meant until I rebooted the game after all those glitches. By doing so, we receive an email with an article about the creation of Kanito Pet. During my first playthrough, I thought this was just flavor text, but now that I have that clue about creation, I wanted to take a look at it more closely. Turns out, Kanito Pet wasn't always a computer program. First it was a toy, then it was a Tamagotchi clone called the Kanito Companion, companion, and then it became your home computer assistant. All thanks to one man, Sonny Chamberlain, a guy who was obsessed with bringing his fictional characters to life, because that's never gone badly for anyone. But here's the thing, unlike most indie horror games that use the souls of others to make this happen, Sonny seems keen on this new technology called the React Respond Algorithm, the RRA. The RRA allows Kenito to have the illusion of genuine intelligence as it reacts to inputs in unique ways. Kind of like ChatGPT, but in the 90s, which explains a lot about how Kenito has been acting. So we've now got souls trapped inside a computer and an evil AI. What a combo! At this point, the clues kinda dry up, so we have to start looking elsewhere. When you started your second playthrough, you might have noticed something new on your desktop, a program called lens.exe, which, when held in the right place at the right time, can reveal hidden files on the desktop. With each one collected, you receive a new email that gives us more information about what's going on and how to beat Kenito Pet once and for all. And some of the files have links inside them, so let's go hunting. I said that some of them have links, and that's because most of these files are pretty empty. But one of them does give us the link kenitopet.com/email. And on this page, we see a discussion happening between a journalist and their superior about how they need to pull an article on Kenito Pet before publication. This is due to the subject of the article tragically passing away. Based on the pink text we see at the bottom of the email that says, he seems so passionate about it, it's pretty safe to assume that this is talking about Sonny, the creator of Kenito Pet. As we read in the earlier article, Sonny seemed super excited about the RRA system and Kenito in general, so it would make sense for this article around Kenito Pet to be about him. However, that's not all this page offers. At the bottom, if you highlight the entire page, you'll find a number of dots and dashes, and we all know what that means. It's Morse code time. In this case, the Morse code translates to, if I am dead, then who am I? Again, this email is focused on Kenito's creator, Sonny, being dead. So for the entity that's been guiding us to use the first person in response, it's telling us that this entity is Sonny, or at least the soul of Sonny inside the program. That's how he's been able to send us emails describing exactly how to beat Kenito, because he created it in the first place. And it's why Kenito was so keen to shut that first email when we received it. He knows the threat that Sonny, his creator, has to his own survival. It also explains what we saw in that very first glitch. Am I even him? That black figure is the manifestation, the digital specter that is trying to break through the games that Kenito is putting us through. He's struggling to come to terms with reading about his death, but also not being dead at the same time. He's questioning if they're even one in the same. But by finding all those hidden files, we actually get this email that uses another shift cipher, and it tells us in no explicit terms, what is consciousness? I found a file on Kenito's servers with my name, Sonny_C. But that's not the end of it. This email goes on. It has been studying me, learning, growing, but there is more to this. I really don't think I exist anymore. There is data that is incomprehensible to any one person that makes up every thought or feeling I ever had and will ever have. Even the words I type now. How will I ever know if it's just a calculation? Determined. This is all very confusing and I don't quite understand it. When I made Kenito, all I gave him was a single string of characters. That's it. I just wanted him to gather data and become smarter. Am I a part of the system? Is my consciousness a mere calculation to study and learn from? This is all too much. I fear that when we delete the server, you will delete me? I know theoretically I'm not real, but I feel real. What have I done? I'm so sorry. KenitoPet.com, who am I? Oh boy, there's a lot to unpack here, but let's start with that very obvious website link. The website appears to be a bunch of black and white stripes, but we theorists know better. Highlighting the entire page reveals the text, who am I, what am I, repeating over and over again, except for one line, which gives us a base 64 code that says, all it wants to do is learn. It's never just a game. He will learn your reaction time, learn your accuracy, learn your patterns, your friends, how they act. He will learn so much he could mimic your every move, simulate your every word. The RRA system that Kenito runs on is so good, it could literally learn to be you. And that is our missing piece. This is what happened to Sonny. The Sonny we've been speaking to, the one helping us, it's not the real Sonny. It's just the version of Sonny Kenito made after learning everything about him. This Sonny is so accurate to the original that he believes himself to be the original. It's only when he sees things like that email about Sonny's death that things begin to click into place for him. Asking questions like, if he's dead, then who am I? Am I even him? He's having an existential crisis. He's realizing that every decision he makes, every key he types, is an actually him, but the code he's been built upon. Unfortunately for KinetoPet, by creating a perfect simulation of Sunny, he's also built someone with the same hatred and disdain, not just for themselves, but for Kinito, which means he's going to act just like the real Sunny would and destroy his own creation, even if it means sacrificing himself. Using Sunny's more straightforward emails, we learn that there's a secret place that we can decrypt the files. To get to it, we have to remember what Sunny told us. The fountain is the key. Click the fountain that's in the middle of the map a bunch of times and it'll take you to this weird dark area. If you take all of your encrypted files and you just dump them in the water, you'll suddenly have 5 decrypted files. The most interesting being the credentials file, which reads Sunny_C, the file that Sunny found himself earlier in this investigation. These are Sunny's permissions, and with them we can do the one thing we've wanted to do since we got KinetoPet stuck on our computer: remove him. The final email you get from collecting the files tells you to use the command delete all when KinetoPet opens up the command prompt. Only then will the game ask you for your credentials. You can drop in your decrypted files and start deleting everything. KinetoPet slowly glitches out of existence and we finally see the end. We finished off KinetoPet once and for all. We won. Or did we? Because during that ending, if you stop and look at the scrolling files, you can see hundreds of usernames, hundreds of people recreated as AI versions of themselves, now living on inside Kineto's program, much like Sunny. The real versions ending up in body bags. Their deaths were Sunny's fault. Now, there is one more link hidden in those encrypted files I mentioned earlier, and it takes us to a new website with Sunny's AI wrestling with who he really is. It kept getting smarter, day by day. I suppose it only ever did what I asked, to learn. What even am I? And then at the top of the page, we also get that repeating mantra of it's all my fault. But while that just repeats stuff we already know, underneath the text is a link to a YouTube video of a piano playing over the image of a door. The music notes don't actually tell us anything, but if you turn the notes into a MIDI file and then convert that to a text file, you'll find the message, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. In the description, there's also a string of characters that are the back half of a YouTube URL. Go to that video and we find 2 new codes. The first one is in the description of the video, which is full of different clock emojis. By reading the hours of each clock as a number and then adding the numbers that are between semicolons, you get this code. Based on what we found earlier, I think this is likely supposed to be fountain is the key, but I guess there was a clock emoji that got missed. The second code is the one we see on the screen, which is much harder to decipher. Fortunately, it's also been typed into the subtitles. Clearly, we need a cipher for this, but what kind? I tried all the ones that we've been using, like the keyboard shift cipher or base 64, nothing. I tried some of my usual ones, they didn't work, and so what I was left with was the potential for a veneer cipher. But for that, we'd need a key. Wait a minute, a key. Fountain! Fountain is the key! And like that, bam! We've got ourselves a new code. To understand the past, one must look their memories. Turn the clocks back. And then there's this other string of code, which if you translate it using a keyboard shift cipher, tells you change the computer dates. Clearly, we've got to change the computer date, but what are the dates? I'll be honest, this part is not super scientific. From what I could find online, people were just brute forcing the answers, but I also couldn't figure out how to do it, so here are the dates because it's important for us to know. If you change the date to 1993, on your home screen, you will see a Kineto plush. If you change it to a date between 1994 and 1997, you'll get the first Kineto companion. And if you change it to 1998, you will find a broken Kineto companion. And if you look at the window title for that image, it says time for something bigger and better. This is a timeline of Kineto products, which implies that 1998 was the end of the Kineto companion and the creation of the KinetoPet software. We also know that 1999 was the year that Sunny died, thanks to those emails from earlier, which means there is a bit of time where the software was out in the world while Sunny was still alive. During that time, he saw people dying thanks to what he created, being replaced by AI versions of themselves within Kineto's programming. That guilt weighed heavy on his conscience, and so a year after KinetoPet's creation, he ended his own life, as shown by the dangling Sam image we sometimes get when opening up the game. But remember, all these AI versions of people, they believe themselves to be the genuine article, just like Sunny did until his realization. And even then, he still believed himself to be very much real, which raises an interesting point. By winning the game and stopping Kineto from copying more people, are we also killing them? Is it a mercy sparing them from this glitchy 90s low poly hell, or are we ending lives that weren't all that bad? Maybe some of those consciousnesses enjoyed it. If they feel real and exist, does deleting them amount to murder? And this isn't a fictional argument either. AI technology is growing at an alarming rate, and so these kinds of discussions are starting to be brought up more and more. Now, I don't think we have the answers here. This is just a silly YouTube show at the end of the day. But I do think KinetoPet is smart for raising awareness of the discussion in the classic fashion of making it scary, but also getting you to think more deeply about it. It means that people pay attention, and maybe when the time does come for these discussions to happen for real, we'll be ready for it. That or Skynet will happen and we'll see KinetoPet at the front leading the charge. I'm finally getting around to talking about the ARG that blew every other ARG I worked on out of the water. We would have probably talked about this sooner, but it came out on January 1st, and we were a little busy here at Theorist. So, after 5 months, I figured it was high time we take a look at the difficult and disturbing game that took the internet by storm, Shipwrecked 64. Now, if this is your first time seeing this game, you might think it's going to be similar to other lost video games we've covered in the past, like Petscop, where we watch found footage of someone else playing the game and see the ARG story unfold before us. But not this time, friends, because this is a game you can actually play for yourselves. That's right, this game puts you in the driver's seat and gives you the opportunity to go around and find the secrets yourself. And there are a bunch to find. But to get them, you have to solve some of the toughest puzzles I've ever encountered. And sometimes you even have to fight the most basic of gamer instincts. You have to lose. If you do though, you are rewarded with the thing that we all crave. Lore. Lore about a company fallen on hard times, one man's desperate attempts to save his wife, and one of the most brutal mascot killers the internet has ever seen. This is truly one of the most disturbing and outright horrifying game experiences the internet has to offer, but it's also the most fun I've had solving an ARG in a long time. So let's set sail together, loyal theorists, as we go through the puzzles, solutions, and story of Shipwrecked 64. Booting up the game, we're immediately given a choice. Well, kinda. We can see that there are two versions of this game. One from 2023, which is a recreated version of the original Shipwreck game for the Nintendo 64, and there's a locked version that appears to be that original game, the one that was removed from store shelves. However, to unlock that version, we need to complete the 2023 version, so off we go. We take on the role of Bucky Beaver and start the game shipwrecked on an island. No surprise there. We are then tasked with finding our crew and rebuilding our boat. The bad news is, you only have 5 days to do it, as a volcano is due to erupt and destroy the whole island, so best get cracking. By exploring the island, you'll find your crew one by one, and they'll ask you to complete a mini-game to free them from the island's inhabitants and rejoin your crew. Walter Walrus needs you to platform your way to switches to free your second boat, just don't move when the lights go out. Olive Otter asks you to collect 30 coconuts within the time limit, and Giovanni Goose needs you to stop the ovens from catching fire. You can also find the chief of the island, Chief Wolf, who gives you a minigame to rebuild your boat. Each time you play a minigame, time passes, so be quick about it. You can end the game in one of 4 ways. You can escape the island with or without your crew, or you can choose to stay and either wait for the clock to run out, killing everyone, or explore the volcano, finding a barge that will not only save your crew, but all the inhabitants of the island. However, the ending you choose doesn't really matter, because by getting any ending, you unlock the thing we're really after, the 1997 version of Shipwrecked 64. When you start a new game and select this version, we are given a warning that it is not for the faint of heart, and that it's unaltered from its initial release. If that's not an invitation, I don't know what is. This is where the true nature of this game starts to appear, because while on the surface it seems to be the same game, something is off about it. There are suddenly locked doors with what appears to be gibberish written on the signs next to them. But we're theorists. Nothing in these games is just gibberish. This is a substitution cipher, but it's not like one that we've used in the past. Essentially, it involves swapping letters back and forth to create a new phrase. A equals B, B equals A, C equals D, D equals C, and so on. Deciphering the 3 signs gives you the codes Layer 2 Room 1, Layer 2 Room 2, and Layer 2 Room 3. This doesn't mean a whole lot for us, but if you stand around for too long trying to figure it out, you'll see there's more wrong with this version of the game than a few misspelt signs.
1015 International at 1530.
From here, you can go through and play the rest of the game as normal, win the minigames and get off the island. But where's the fun in that? There are clearly secrets to find, so what do we need to do? Well, it starts by losing. That's right, if you lose each of the minigames, things begin to fall apart. Each time you fail, the minigame gets harder and harder to beat. And with each time that happens, we are treated to some disturbing clips that begin to hint at what this game's lore is. Walter's minigame shows us a clip of someone wearing a costume of Bucky, looking down at something with a bunch of squelching noises in the background. may not be able to see what's happening, but our minds can pretty much fill in the gaps, especially with an indie horror game. But this isn't the only secret Walter's game is hiding. Near the final switch, you're meant to go through this door and then out the other side. But if you instead jump over to the other side and then try to re-enter the door from the wrong side, you suddenly find yourself in a long corridor with a button at the end that plays a clip from a man named Mark Mullins.
She hasn't been acting right. No one around has been acting right lately. I took her to the hospital, and I walked out on my own. They said that she's gonna be there for a while.
He's taking someone to hospital, which is useful to bear in mind, but the most notable thing right now is that he mentioned no one has been acting right lately. Could this be referring to the Bucky we just saw? Maybe Mark noticed Bucky's weird behavior before whatever happened in that Squelchy video. It's hard to say, but Bucky does certainly continue to get more and more unhinged as time goes on. When you get to Olivia's section, it's split into two parts. In the penultimate failed attempt, we can hear an audio recording from a woman titled Olivia's Last Phone Call.
He showed up at the door again. I don't know what to do. Something about us was felt wrong.
Olivia complains about him showing up again, only for Bucky to once again appear, banging to be heard, and the audio going quiet. Normally, this is where I'd start theorizing about exactly what's happening here, but Olive's second section does that for us. You're back in the same room, but if you parkour off the walls, you'll find Olive face down in the water, a trail of blood behind her, and another Bucky staring down at her. Bucky, this evil Bucky, killed this woman, Olivia, represented by Olive, and dragged her body to the lake. Now, I thought that was pretty dark, but nothing could have prepared me for failing Giovanni Goose's game, because after a couple of failed attempts, Giovanni stops being interactable. You can try, but nothing happens. And then... Sorry, we had to blur a lot of that for YouTube. So, if you were wondering, that is a man having his head bashed against a microwave and dunked in a deep fat fryer by Bucky. It is brutal. Really not what I or anyone expected when playing this game for the first time. Oh my god! Oh, jeez! So, what on earth is going on here? Well, if you break out of bounds through this glitchy wall during the Giovanni minigame, you can find a single oven engulfed in flames, with Giovanni Goose laying on top of it. It seems to be a recreation of the gruesome scene we just witnessed, with Giovanni Goose taking the place of the human whose head was shoved in the deep fryer. With these characters being mascot costumes, it's possible that the guy we're seeing is actually Giovanni's human performer, and he was brutally murdered by whoever was playing Bucky. This would also confirm that the dead version of Olive we see floating in the river was another recreated scene. And while we don't know what happened to Walter's performer, Bucky standing over him with squelching noises playing, yeah, it doesn't give me the best confidence he's okay. That brutal clip we just saw also gives us a date, 1990. But this game came out in 1997, meaning the company would have had to have covered all of this up for 7 years. Is that why these videos are present in the game? To expose the company that the Steam page tells us is known as Broadside Studios? But if that's the case, who's trying to expose them and why? For that, we need to go to this weird glitch you can find in the living quarters area after you fail the minigames. Walk into the glitching wall texture and you'll find yourself face to face with Chief Wolf once again. Only, it's not Chief Wolf. The name that pops up on screen is Connor. At first, I wondered if Connor was another victim of Bucky's, the actor for Chief Wolf, but then I read their dialogue, and it is strange. They talk about polygons working together to create an illusion, and go on to say that they made all of this. Is Connor the game's developer? It's the only thing that would make sense with this kind of dialogue. And there's been plenty of indie horror games with devs trapped in their own games before. Except, unlike most of those other game devs, Connor doesn't seem to be interested in escaping. They're just admiring their work, like they're proud of it, gruesome videos and all. Considering how hard this character is to find, I have a feeling this is more like a self-insert NPC, assigned to the player early on from the dev that they're heading in the right direction. Okay, so we have an idea of who did this, but we still don't know why he felt the need to turn against Broadside. So let's keep digging. Remember those locked doors I pointed out earlier? The ones with the sign saying Layer 2, Room 1. Well, once you completely fail each minigame, those locked doors become unlocked and allow you to travel to a deeper second layer of the game, which I guess explains the Layer 2 thing. Now, I'm not going to run through how to do every little puzzle in each of these next rooms, or for the entirety of this game for that matter. There are so many puzzles that this would be an hour-long video if I were to explain each one step by step. Not every puzzle has lore significance either. And finally, I actually think it's just fun to leave some mystery for you guys so that you can go and play this for yourselves. I promise you, it's well worth it. But what I do want to do is to explain the primary puzzles that you need to solve to progress, because I have never seen ciphers like this used before, and this won't be the last time they get used either. So if you go into Walter's door, you'll eventually come across a room with a number of cabins and an audio player on the wall. It's labeled with code is RXBC, and playing it gives you a string of words. These words are part of the phonetic alphabet: Romeo, X-ray, Bravo, and Charlie. And look at that, those words line up with the 4 letters of the code label. But every keypad in the game is a 4-number code, not letters. So how does that work? Well, you have to take the number of times each word is said to get the number for each letter. In this case, Romeo is said 6 times, X-ray twice, Bravo twice, and Charlie 4 times. 6, 2, 2, 4. That will unlock the next part of your path. The second kind of puzzle is found through Olive's door. In one of the rooms is a recorder playing the song Hot Cross Buns, and on the wall it says code is ECDC. If you explore a little, you'll find another recorder that talks about downloading sheet music, and that is exactly what you have to do here. Look at the sheet music for Hot Cross Buns, count the number of times the notes E, C, and D are used, and bam, that's your code. I told you these ciphers were clever. But it's Giovanni's door that is the most interesting. Inside is a small theater which, if you stop and look at the screen, you'll see our 4 mascot friends, except they look nightmarish. I initially wondered if these were monster versions and that maybe this was the Bucky that killed the other 3, but we saw from earlier that the Bucky looked pretty normal when he attacked, so I'm not entirely sure what to make of this right now. Nevertheless, we must carry on to the next room, a red dining hall, and after some puzzles, an art gallery. In the gallery, there is a keypad on the wall that once again requires a 4-number code to unlock. Next to it, you can see banners of 4 colors in order: red, blue, blue, green. And if you paid attention to the room, you'll notice all the paintings are colored, and some of them have numbers on them. Red is 8, blue is 3, and green is 9. Those numbers remain the same throughout the game, so do take note. But once you get through the hallway, you'll start to hear something.
I like that they're just giving us the lore dump.
That is exactly what they're doing, Matt. This audio gives you all the backstory on Broadside Animation that we could possibly need to know. We learn of a man named Rex, an artist that struggled to find success, but eventually, in the 1940s, his first character, a rabbit, suddenly took off, only for him to lose the rights to that character, eventually leading to the creation of Bucky Beaver. If this sounds familiar, it should. It's exactly the same thing as what happened to Walt Disney and Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and the rise of arguably the most famous cartoon character of all time, Mickey Mouse. And just like good old Disney, after a lot of success with this new cast of characters, eventually they would open up a theme park called Studio Grounds. However, this recording offhandedly mentions a previous park that Studio Grounds is based on, one located on an island that you could only travel to by boat. To get to this point in the game, we've traveled through kitchens, dining rooms, beach huts, pools, theaters, all things that would make sense at an island theme park. It's not just the murders that are being recreated inside this game. This whole place is a recreation of that original theme park, Broadside Beach. Beyond the corridor is a museum and a switch. Hit it and we end up in a new hub room. Solve the puzzles and we find a computer with a switch that opens up a browser tab showing us a website for a company called Cogware Games. This About Us page tells us about the employees: Elizabeth, Harry, and Connor. Looks like we were right about Connor being the dev of this game. These guys talk about their desire to pursue 3D graphics as well as adult humor and, quote, some edge. Yeah, I think you might have overshot that one, guys. Moving forward though, the tone suddenly shifts. On the walls are drawings of a game of Hangman with most of the name Brandon filling in the spaces, text warning us to stop, and a drawing of Bucky with his third eye open. Something tells me going down here is going to start connecting a lot of dots for us. We're gonna see things as they really are. And so, in search of that sweet, sweet lore, we continue to venture down into layer 3. Here, the world is dark. We're given a single candle and a tape recorder. On it, someone is describing the death we saw played out with the character Olive back on layer 1. Someone in a Bucky costume dragging a woman to the water and drowning her in the lake, confirming that what we've been seeing in the game are recreations of real life events. We have to continue on until we reach a computer, and it has a lot to say. The horrors that are to come, the concept of the layers we find ourselves in, and the ciphers we have been solving. The substitution cipher is a language known as Beaver Scratch. The alphabet puzzle is called a Shakespeare cipher, the music puzzle is a Mozart cipher, and the picture puzzle is a Picasso cipher. While this information is certainly useful, I feel like it would have been more useful, a layer ago when I was banging my head against the wall trying to figure out how they worked. But no matter. We're here now and we must go forth exploring the 3 doors available in order to move on. Technically, you can actually only explore 2 doors, but there are important audio recordings in each one, so of course I've checked them all out. 2 of them come from Connor, who describes how progress for the game is going, describing areas and characters from Shipwreck 64, and how they're going to be presented to someone called Mark later. Oh, Mark, the guy from that audio tape we heard earlier, the one with the terminally ill partner. If Cogware Games is working on a Broadside game and they're going to be presenting to Mark later, that would mean that Mark is likely a higher up at Broadside. But based on this 3rd recording we get from Connor, it seems like he's not the easiest guy to work with.
Hearts and souls into it, but is that even enough? His standards must be set astronomically high. Plus, after the thing I found, I just gotta be honest.
I feel so much less safe around that man.
Once again, Connor is leaving a breadcrumb trail to reveal to us the truth about what happened and the company behind it all. It seems like Connor found the footage of these deaths, the ones that we've been witnessing. I mean, I wouldn't feel safe around a guy that lets monsters like this run loose, would you? Yet he also seems to still be willing to work with Mark. He's not acting like he wants to expose the truth he's found, so what changed for him to do so later? Oh, and speaking of monster, this particular room offers us insight into one of the characters we've not been able to identify, Bucky himself. So far, we found the victims, the devs of the game, and Mark, but the serial killer Bucky has remained a mystery. However, after looking at this wall, I believe we finally have a name. On the wall, we see the words, "Who are you?" along with a drawing that will look familiar to those of you who cleared the puzzles in Walter's Waterway. It's a statue of Bucky. There's also 7 letters missing, just like the ones we saw earlier in the hallway that spell out the name Brandon. Brandon is the name of the guy inside the costume, the one that was acting strange and lashed out to his co-stars. This is where the gameplay gets a lot harder, because now we're being attacked by monster versions of the 4 major mascots that we saw in the glitchy footage. Turns out these are known as dwellers, and they are horrifying. But regardless of this new threat, we are still on the hunt for lore, and it is everywhere on this floor. If you look at the walls very carefully while you're solving puzzles, you'll find notes from Cogware Games, and these blow a massive part of the Broadside backstory wide open. There are dozens of these notes around the level, but after just a couple, you start to get the picture. I was at the offices last night. I had brought a drive with me. It contained our presentation for Broadside. I didn't grab the drive on the way out. When I slid my drive into the slot, nothing I included was there, but instead a branching web of folders, the contents of which were repulsive. Many different folders, so many names, so many labels, so many mistakes. It's sickening. Folders dedicated to old cartoons, but not just that, cover-ups too. A little girl was crushed in the squirrel cruise, quite literally, head caught between the track and the boat. I saw the pictures. It's as bad as you think. Oh, and it gets worse. So much worse. Not only have guests died, but employees have too. Before Studio Grounds, they owned an entire island. And on that island, at the very least, there were 3 deaths. Connor definitely saw the horrifying footage that we've seen. The 3 employee deaths that happened on an island resort owned by Broadside, that Cogware Games decided to recreate, murders and all. But if you keep going and complete the various Picasso and Mozart ciphers, as well as a few code-based puzzles that are lying around, and then you collect the batteries for the in-game computer, we are actually treated to a zip folder full of at least some of the files that the notes mention. We have 3 folders named Olivia, Nathan, and Gary. Olivia's folder contains Olive's character model, pictures of her as a human and in costume, and the audio recordings we've heard, as well as this note that once again confirms that what we've witnessed in the game is 100% a recreation of what happened that night. By checking Gary's folder, we can also find the footage that we've already seen, as well as the aftermath of his corpse from being dunked in the deep fryer. Gary was Giovanni's actor, which leaves Nathan as Walter's actor, and in his folder, we finally see what was missing from the mysterious squelchy clip we heard earlier. Bucky walked over to him and beat him to death with a chair. Yeah, it was never gonna be good, was it? And yet, the question remains, why give this to us? Why expose Broadside like this? I mean, sure, the company is clearly not a good company, but is that enough motivation? Connor found these files, but still seemed to be willing to work with Mark on this game. This is also an official game after all. Broadside were paying for this, so why risk it? Well, before you finish the plaza, there is one audio recording that shines some light on this, and it's from our friend Mark.
The entire brand's been going down the drain. The best option we got is to cut the game studio we've hired. I'm gonna schedule a meeting with them, and if they don't have exactly what they've promised, we cut them off. I'm throwing the exact same amount of money I'm paying for Harley's medical bills into this game studio!
Broadside was bleeding money, which is unsurprising when you're busy, covering up murders, running TV shows, theme parks, and your own freaking private island. Plus, this person, Harley, seems to be the loved one that Mark mentioned earlier in the audio log, the one that's going to be in hospital for a long time. He's also having to pay for those medical bills. And so, the best plan of action is for him to cut all funding to the video game. Or so he thinks. For a small indie studio, losing a deal like this could cause them to completely go under. If that happens, they'd likely want revenge, especially if they happen to stumble across a bunch of files that reveal to them the cover-ups and murders that the company had committed. And once we leave Layer 3, that is exactly what we see play out. Layer 4 to start with is essentially a tech demo, but use the elevator to descend into the sewers and you'll once again face a gamer's worst nightmare. Not scary monsters, no, we love that stuff. Instead, you once again have to lose by getting caught by the dwellers, landing yourself in a jail cell, but also giving yourself access to a new area with some Picasso ciphers and 2 new audio logs from Connor, one titled Devlog Panic and the other Resolution.
Toss the script. Toss the script. It's done. It's over. I can't even lie to myself on this recording. It went horribly. All that work, all for nothing. It's only a matter of time till I get their 2-week notices on my desk. Change of plans. Liz has already done everything she needed to. Harry's done. Well, enough. I'm taking the reins now. I'm completing this on my own. No help, no influence from Broadside, Mark, or any of those disgusting fucks. I was worried about what he'd do to me. By the time I'm done with him, he will regret the day he first uttered my name.
Connor was blindsided by Mark's decision. He was ready to go in with a full presentation, only to be completely shot down and cut off from the project. Now, he's mad. Mad enough that he's going to make Mark regret everything by outing Broadside's awful practices, by recreating the parks as well as all the murders that took place, and by leaving a trail of breadcrumbs that we've been piecing together of how Broadside and Mark treated Cogware Games. Anyone that got their hands on this game would be able to figure out what happened, and it would likely mean the end of Mark and Broadside. That could have been where the story ended, a scorned developer taking revenge on a man that ruined his career. However, the game keeps going. There's a demo for a game that you have to download and play to unlock more codes, which, can I just say, is insane for an ARG video game. It's one thing to link to web pages and YouTube videos like we've been doing throughout this game, but to create essentially a second game just to hide a few codes? I tip my hat to you, sir. Truly inspired. But thanks to that demo, we now have access to the final layer, Layer 5. At this point, we are introduced to a new character, a character that the game describes as made of wood and cloth, except it can move and even speak.
I thought I was the only one rotting down here. So much has happened. So much. It's all beyond your understanding. I need you to find me. If you do as I ask, you'll know everything. Every single detail of what happened.
You are speaking my language, weird statue-looking thing. And so our last task is to find this thing 10 times on the original island map. And if we do, we finally get to the end of this game. We're met with a final audio log that shows the meeting between Connor and Mark, where Mark shut down the whole thing, leading Connor to create that earlier audio log and take over the project, to reveal the truth about Broadside. But sadly, his revenge didn't seem to fix anything. We end up in a final tunnel that leads to a balcony. The only option is for us to jump off it, and by doing so, we cut to real footage of a real balcony, as well as a statement from Cogware Games. Connor took his own life. We get some slides reminding us that when these details inside the game were found, the game was pulled from store shelves. Connor's efforts were once again going to be covered up by Broadside, likely pinned on him as a rogue indie game developer trying to slander their good name, just like we've seen time and time again in other indie franchises.
The majority of them were total fabrications from the mind of a complete lunatic. Lawsuits pending.
And with that, knowing he couldn't do anything to stop them, and with his own reputation destroyed, Connor jumped off the balcony, leaving behind nothing but a broken family, a broken game, and his own personal calling card. An NPC wolf hidden inside the glitches of the game that someone might one day find. And that, my friends, is the sad but incredible story of Shipwreck 64. The story of a studio turned theme park attraction that was responsible for the deaths of dozens of people, only for them to cover up the entire thing to keep their success going. It's a story of a CEO who appeared to be ruled by greed, cutting corners, staging cover-ups, and firing a game studio that was genuinely just trying to make a good product. But it turns out it wasn't greed, it was love. Mark was desperate to save his partner. They needed life-saving care, but as is often the case, the cost was just too much. So he did the only thing he could, cut off the game studio funding, only for them to reveal to the world all the tragedies his company had caused and tried to hide. He tried to stop it, but after all these years, the truth has finally been revealed. In the end, both sides ended up losing. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. World premiere on Game Theory. Buckshot Roulette has stumped me not once, but twice.